26 state attorneys general just opened a coordinated investigation into OpenAI, and it's not what you think. This isn't about ChatGPT being creepy or whatever. It's a legal assault targeting how the company actually operates at every level, from data handling to model training to how it sells itself to the public. Here's the shocking part. Most people haven't heard a word about it, even though this investigation could force OpenAI to rebuild from the ground up. OpenAI has always positioned itself as the responsible AI company. They talk about safety. They talk about alignment with human values. They publish research papers about their concerns. But here's what the states are really asking behind closed doors. Is any of that actually true? When you sign up for ChatGPT and agree to their terms, what are you really agreeing to? Are they being honest about what their models can do? Are they being honest about what they are doing with your data? The investigation is happening at exactly the worst possible moment for OpenAI. AI regulation is being written right now. Every move these states make, every finding they uncover, becomes a template that other governments will copy. If they find serious violations, it sets the legal precedent for the entire industry. If they find that consumer protection laws apply to AI in ways nobody expected, suddenly every tech company operating in those states has to comply. And that's just the beginning. OpenAI didn't start as a corporate giant. Sam Altman founded it as a nonprofit, supposedly devoted to ensuring that artificial general intelligence benefits humanity. That was 2015. For years, they operated quietly, releasing papers, researching alignment, staying out of the headlines. Then ChatGPT happened. November 2022. They released a chatbot to the public, and it exploded. 100 million users in 2 months. Suddenly, OpenAI wasn't just an AI research company. It was a platform holding the personal data and conversations of tens of millions of people. But growth came with problems. As ChatGPT got more popular, questions started piling up. How is OpenAI actually training these models? They'd published papers saying they cared about safety, but were they actually building safe systems? What happens to the conversations people have with ChatGPT? Is that data being used to improve the model without consent? When you pay for ChatGPT Plus, are you actually getting a better model or just a different interface? The company started facing criticism from multiple angles at once. Researchers worried about safety. Privacy advocates worried about data handling. Authors and artists started suing because their work had been used to train the models without permission. Labor groups complained about the data labeling process. Competitors started claiming OpenAI's dominance in the market was unfair. All of these separate concerns eventually landed on the same desks, the desks of state attorneys general, and that's when things got serious. Here's where it gets complicated. A state attorney general's job is consumer protection. They're not looking at whether OpenAI's AI is philosophically aligned with humanity. They're looking at whether the company broke the law. Specifically, consumer protection law. That means they're asking, did OpenAI misrepresent its product? Did it collect data illegally? Did it make false claims about what ChatGPT can do? The first big investigation angle is marketing claims. OpenAI markets ChatGPT as incredibly capable. They show examples of it solving complex problems, writing code, passing exams. But here's the thing, ChatGPT also hallucinates. It makes stuff up and presents it as fact. It confidently gives you wrong answers. These states want to know, when you're selling a product, do you have to disclose its major weaknesses? Do you have to tell consumers that this system is fundamentally unreliable at certain tasks? Or can you cherry-pick examples and let people discover the failures themselves? The second angle is data. When you use ChatGPT, you're sharing your personal information with OpenAI. Conversations, email addresses, payment data if you're a paid user. Some states are investigating whether OpenAI had clear consent for how that data is being used. Are they using your conversations to train new models? Are they selling access to that data? Are they protecting it adequately against breaches? Some states have strict data privacy laws, and if OpenAI violated them, there could be massive fines. The third angle is basically antitrust, market dominance. OpenAI controls the market for generative AI. It's the most popular, most used, most trusted. If the company got there by cutting corners on safety or privacy, that's not just a legal problem, It's an unfair, competitive advantage. Let's get concrete. What actually triggered these investigations? First, there's the training data issue. OpenAI trained ChatGPT on billions of pieces of text it scraped from the internet. A lot of that content was copyrighted. Books, articles, artwork. The company did this without explicit permission from the creators. Now, OpenAI would argue that this falls under fair use. But state attorneys general are asking a different question. When you scrape someone's creative work without consent, did you violate that person's privacy or intellectual property rights under state law? If you did, and then you built a billion-dollar company on top of it, who gets compensated? Second, there's capability inflation. OpenAI's marketing materials show ChatGPT doing things it actually can't reliably do. One example, ChatGPT cannot actually access the internet. It has a knowledge cutoff, but in promotional materials, they show it doing research tasks that would require internet access. Consumers see those examples, buy a subscription, and discover the system doesn't actually work that way. That's the definition of false advertising under consumer protection law. Third, there's the safety versus sales tension. OpenAI publishes papers about how dangerous AI could be. They talk about alignment risks and the need for caution. But at the same time, they're racing to make ChatGPT more capable, more powerful, and more accessible, because that's where the revenue is. Some of these states are asking, if you're publicly worried about AI safety, but you're building and deploying more powerful systems anyway, are you being truthful with consumers about the risks? Fourth is the data retention question. How long does OpenAI keep your conversations? Can you actually delete your data? Are they being transparent about what happens to your information after you stop using the service? To understand why this investigation is so significant, you have to look at what happened to the last wave of big tech companies. Facebook got investigated for privacy violations. They paid $4.9 billion in fines. Google got investigated for antitrust. They spent years in regulatory battles. Amazon faced scrutiny over seller data. Twitter and Elon faced questions about content moderation and data handling. Each of those companies thought they were invincible when they were at their peak. Each of them had politicians and regulators looking the other way for years. Then suddenly, the scrutiny became coordinated. Multiple states moved at once. The federal government got involved. The consensus shifted from let Silicon Valley do whatever to actually no, you need to follow the law. OpenAI is at that inflection point right now. The difference is timing. OpenAI went from 0 to 100 million users in months. That's faster than any previous tech company, which means regulators are moving faster too. They don't want a repeat of Facebook or Google where the problem metastasizes for years before anyone acts. But here's the key distinction. Facebook, Google, Amazon, they were well-established companies with billions in revenue and armies of lawyers. OpenAI is younger, smaller, less entrenched. If state attorneys general find serious violations, OpenAI might not have the resources to fight a multi-year legal battle and keep operating at the same time. Facebook paid $4.9 billion. That hurt, but Facebook could absorb it. Can OpenAI? That's the difference. Established monopolies can weather regulatory fines. Younger companies sometimes can't. If this investigation finds violations, the penalties could be existential. And that's where the stakes get truly interesting. Let's zoom out. What does a state-level investigation into OpenAI actually mean for you, for the AI industry, and for how technology gets regulated going forward? First, if these states find violations, OpenAI faces serious consequences. We are talking about potential fines running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. We are talking about forced changes to how they operate. Maybe they have to be transparent about how they train models. Maybe they have to get explicit consent before using data. Maybe they have to dramatically improve safety measures. Any of those changes would be expensive and disruptive. And if some states impose rules that others don't, suddenly OpenAI has to maintain different versions of ChatGPT for different regions, which gets complicated fast. Second, this investigation sets a template. If state attorneys general find that consumer protection laws apply to AI, then every AI company operating in those states suddenly has to comply. That's not just OpenAI. That's Google's Gemini. That's Meta's AI tools. That's every startup building generative AI. One investigation into OpenAI could reshape the entire industry. Third, and this is the big one, this shows that the regulatory window is closing. For years, big tech operated in a gray zone where laws written for the internet in the 1990s were stretched to cover companies that barely existed back then. That era is over. Regulators are moving faster. They're being more aggressive. They're coordinating across state lines. If you're building an AI company, you can't just assume the law doesn't apply to you anymore. These investigations are writing new legal precedent in real time. Fourth, this could accelerate consolidation in AI. Smaller AI startups don't have the legal resources to fight state investigations. They might get acquired by bigger companies just to get regulatory protection. That could paradoxically make the market even more dominated by a few players. Here's what's actually going to happen next. First, the attorneys general have opened an investigation. That means they're requesting documents from OpenAI, internal emails, training data sources, compliance records, communications with executives about safety concerns. OpenAI will have to provide all of this, and it's going to take months. Second, they're interviewing people, current employees, former employees, people who have used ChatGPT and have complaints. They're building a case, gathering evidence of wrongdoing. This phase can take a year or longer, depending on how complex the issues are. Third, the attorneys general will produce a report. It'll detail what they found, whether they believe laws were violated, and what they are recommending. That report becomes public. When it drops, it's not just news for tech people, it dominates headlines. It shapes public perception of the company. Even if no charges are filed, a damaging report can destroy investor confidence and drive users to competitors. Fourth, there's negotiation. If the report finds violations, OpenAI will negotiate a settlement. They'll agree to change their practices and pay fines. These negotiations can take months or years. Occasionally, they go to trial instead, but that's rare because trials are expensive and unpredictable. Fifth, whatever happens with OpenAI sets the precedent. Other states start their own investigations using the same playbook. Other regulators, the FTC, the Justice Department, they look at what these states found and launch their own probes. The entire process from investigation launch to final settlement typically takes 2 to 4 years. OpenAI is at the beginning of that timeline. The investigation could dominate headlines, investor relations, and the company's strategic planning for years. Every quarter they report earnings. Investors will be asking about the investigation status. Here's what matters. OpenAI is facing the most serious legal challenge of its existence. 26 state attorneys general moving in coordination is not a warning shot. It's the real thing. The investigation will determine whether consumer protection laws actually apply to generative AI the way they apply to other technology products. The findings will likely reshape the entire industry. But here's the thing most people are missing. This isn't the only investigation happening. The federal government is watching. The European Union is watching. Every country on Earth is grappling with how to regulate AI, and they're all waiting to see how US states handle it. If these investigations succeed, if they find serious violations and force real consequences, expect a wave of regulations globally. If they fail or stall out, expect regulators everywhere else to get more aggressive and move faster. For ChatGPT users, the immediate impact is probably minimal. OpenAI isn't shutting down. They're not going to suddenly disappear tomorrow, but over the next 2 to 4 years, the service will probably change. The company might get more transparent about data handling. They might add stronger privacy protections. They might be forced to be clearer about what ChatGPT can and can't actually do. Those are good changes from a consumer perspective. The bigger question is whether OpenAI's dominance in AI survives intact. If the investigation finds serious violations and imposes strict compliance requirements, the company's costs go up dramatically. That gives competitors room to operate. You might see other AI services gain ground. You might see the market get more competitive and less concentrated. That's actually what these investigations are supposed to accomplish. They're supposed to level the playing field. Stay tuned. This story is just beginning. Follow us for daily AI news updates as this investigation unfolds.